Welcome to the Bofos on this wonderful Heritage Day. I am Bongeni Muchwa. The International Labour Organization has called on governments around the world to act urgently to overcome the devastating impact of the coronavirus on employment. In its latest assessment of the effects of the pandemic on the world of work, the ILO has found that there has been a massive drop in income for workers around the world. According to the ILO, workplace closures have resulted in a big drop in labor income, especially in lower middle-income countries. And while stringent lockdowns have been relaxed in many countries, 32% of the global workforce is in countries where there are still closures on all workplaces except essential services. Against this background, the ILO says support measures for jobs, businesses, and incomes must be sustained. For more, we are joined by the Africa Director of the International Labour Organization, Mr. Joni Musabayana. Mr. Musabayana, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. A very bleak report that you have released, $3.5 trillion you say has been lost by workers due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It paints a very big devastation of the livelihoods of workers around the world.
Yes, thank you very much for having me, Bongeni. And let me start by wishing all South Africans a happy Heritage Day. Indeed, the COVID-19 has had a huge impact, not only on the health of nations, but also in the world of work. And it is clear that the amount of work hours that have been lost have continued to increase. And related to the loss of work hours then is the loss in terms of the income of workers that they earn from their employers. And we have it that in the first quarter of 2020, up to 400 million equivalent full-time jobs have been lost. And this now is a rise into the second quarter of 17%, leading to about 495 million full-time jobs which are being lost. We estimate that in the third quarter of 2020, 12% of the global working time will be lost, translating to 345 million full-time jobs globally. What this means is that we probably have reached the peak in terms of job losses, but that they are still continuing to be significantly high. And with that is an incredible loss of income and therefore many workers being plunged into poverty. Thank you very much, Mama.
Now, you say that Latin America is the worst affected region of the world, meaning that Africa is doing better than Latin America. How is the situation in Africa really when it comes to this devastation?
I think, Mangen, we have to start by saying that the prophets of doom that had anticipated that the COVID-19 would wreak incredible havoc on the Africans and African economies, and that we would probably literally have dead bodies in the streets everywhere, has not come to fruition. Africa has shown itself to be resilient. Africans have shown to be resilient in the face of this disease. And with that, it has shown that Africa has coped relatively much better. And credit must be given to African governments, which quickly put in place lockdown measures, which indeed were severe and had huge economic impact and impacted workers, particularly in the informal economies, very highly. But credit must also be given for the stimulus packages that were put into place. We know that in this country, President Ramaphosa put into place a 500 billion stimulus package. And we know that, for example, UIF has distributed about 41 billion rand to about 9.5 million workers from around 800,000 employers' applications to ameliorate the impact of COVID on workers. And this, I think, is what accounts for the relatively good performance of Africa vis-a-vis, for example, the Americas.
Now, we know that South Africa has been held as an example by the ILO over many, many years when it comes to worker protections. Are we still holding that place, maybe with our UIF benefit scheme when it comes to mitigating the impact of the pandemic on the incomes of workers in the world?
Indeed. We have to say that maybe an analysis helps here. There are about 5 African countries that have unemployment insurance schemes or funds in place, of which South Africa takes pride of place in terms of the size and scale of the UIF program. I know that there have been unfortunate developments in the disbursement of some of those funds, but I think credit must be given first that we had a robust social security system globally, both for contributory and non-contributory schemes, and that on the contributory side, UIF is really an example of how many other African countries can ameliorate the impact of the crises such as COVID on workers. And in this regard, the disbursements by UIF to more than 9 million workers have definitely managed to limit the impact of COVID on what would have otherwise been a catastrophic scale. Thanks.
Now, you as the ILO are calling on world governments to come up with a global economic recovery plan. We know with the recent experience here in this country that efforts to put together and pass a national economic recovery plan, it's easier said than done. How confident are you that we can see something that come to fruition, a global economic recovery plan?
This is an important question. We see that stimulus packages have been very huge in the so-called developed world, and that they've been minimal in the developing world. And our worry as the ILO and the United Nations is that that is already increasing what was already an inequality challenge. An inequality challenge between countries, within countries, between particular segments and groups in society. And now when we talk about inequality, we know that Southern Africa is one of the regions that is hardest hit by inequality, with South Africa and Namibia competing to be the most unequal societies in the world. And therefore, the scale and timing and implementation of fiscal packages must, in our view, have an effect of reducing inequality rather than exacerbating the inequalities that were already there. We know that there have been particularly now, nationalist tendencies. We are seeing that in the US, for example, and the desire for collective global action. At this time, the appetite seems to be declining. But the role of the United Nations is to still say, we are better together. We can combat COVID together. And the better there is a coordinated global stimulus package, the better for everyone. We know that COVID is one of those health crises where nobody is safe until everybody is treated and everybody is taken care of.
Well, Mr. Musabayana, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, and happy Heritage Day to you. Well, that's why we leave it for this week. The Labour Force, my colleague Nastasia Arense joins you after the break. It's bye from me.